This is not good news. We've had a Mayday call on this fire. That means we've got firefighters injured.
Hot! Very hot!
Three football fields every single second. That is how fast a wildfire just devoured the Oklahoma Panhandle, and by the time anyone realized what was happening, it had already crossed into another state. But the truly terrifying part of this story is not the fire itself, it is what was missing when the fire arrived. On the morning of February 17, 2026, somewhere southeast of Beaver, Oklahoma, a fire sparked to life in the far northwestern corner of the state. Within 2 hours, 15,000 acres had been consumed. By late afternoon, 145,000 acres were gone. And by the time the sun went down that evening, the fire had traveled 65 miles due north, jumping the state line into Kansas, ripping through 4 counties across 2 states in a single burn period, 65 miles in one day. That is not a slow, creeping wildfire working its way through dense timber. That is a freight train of flames screaming across open grassland faster than many people could physically drive away from it. The Ranger Road Fire, as it came to be called, did not stop until February 25th. By the time it was finally contained, it had scorched 283,000 acres, making it the single largest wildfire in the entire United States so far in 2026. And it was only one of dozens burning across Oklahoma simultaneously. But here is where this story takes a turn that almost nobody is covering. This fire, this historic and catastrophic event, struck a state that had effectively dismantled its own wildfire response infrastructure 12 months before the flames arrived. And that decision, that single bureaucratic failure, is the thread that connects everything you are about to hear. Let's rewind to March of 2025. Oklahoma had just come through a brutal wildfire season. 4 people were dead. Over 400 homes had been destroyed. The state was reeling, and Governor Kevin Stitt's response was not to increase funding or bolster resources. His response was to fire the man in charge. Mark Goler, a 40-year veteran who had spent his career running Oklahoma Forestry Services, was terminated. Goler publicly stated that he was falsely accused, but the governor went further. He floated the idea of eliminating the forestry agency entirely, not restructuring it, not reforming it, eliminating it. Now fast forward 12 months. The state forester position remains vacant. The agency's budget has been slashed by 40%. The fire training program that supports volunteer departments across Oklahoma operates on roughly $1 million when it needs $4.5 million to function properly. And across the state, over 900 volunteer fire departments, staffed not by professional crews, but by local ranchers, farmers, and community members who fight fires without pay, are the primary line of defense against one of the most aggressive wildfire environments in the country. Let that settle for a moment. 900 volunteer departments funded largely by bake sales, barbecue fundraisers, and community donations are the infrastructure standing between Oklahoma and the next catastrophic ignition. And the state entered this fire season without a single person occupying the top leadership role responsible for coordinating wildfire response. To understand why the Ranger Road Fire behaved the way it did, you have to understand what is sitting underneath the surface across the Great Plains. Earlier in 2026, the National Interagency Fire Center issued a fuels and fire behavior advisory that should have generated national headlines. It did not. The advisory described a continuous fuel bed of dried grass stretching across more than 100 million acres of the central and southern Great Plains. 100 million acres. That is an area larger than the entire state of California. Above normal grass growth from the previous year had layered on top of dead vegetation from prior seasons, and all of it had cured over the winter into the perfect ignition material. Under drought conditions with winds gusting between 60 and 70 miles per hour, this fuel bed does not just burn, it explodes. This is the critical distinction between plains fires and the wildfires most people think about in California or Colorado. In mountainous terrain, fires burn through timber and brush. They are intense, they are devastating, but they encounter natural barriers. Ridgelines, rivers, roads, rocky terrain. These features slow fire spread and give crews opportunities to establish containment. On the plains, none of that exists. The terrain is flat, the grass is continuous. There are no ridgelines, there are no natural fire breaks. When a sustained wind drives a flame front across that kind of landscape, the fire does not slow down, it accelerates. The Ranger Road fire proved definitively that a single ignition point in the Oklahoma Panhandle can generate a 65-mile inferno in fewer than 12 hours, crossing state borders with absolutely no meaningful obstruction. While the Ranger Road fire was tearing through the Panhandle, the Stevens fire forced the evacuation of roughly 4,000 people from Woodward, Oklahoma, about a third of the city's population. Families grabbed whatever they could carry, loaded vehicles, and drove south. The Moreland United Methodist Church at 302 South Elm opened its doors as an emergency shelter. Red Cross workers set up inside, distributing food and water to displaced residents who had no idea when or whether they would have homes to return to. Across the broader region, another 11,000 people evacuated from the towns of Englewood, Ashland, and Tyrone. These are small communities, places where people know each other's names, where the local volunteer fire department is made up of their neighbors, and those neighbors were out on the fire lines trying to hold back something that could not be held. And then there is what happened hundreds of miles away from any fire line. On Interstate 25 in Colorado, wildfire smoke and dust from the Oklahoma and Kansas fires drifted across the plains and reduced highway visibility to near zero. A 30-vehicle pileup killed 4 people. 4 people who were nowhere near a wildfire died because the smoke traveled farther and faster than anyone anticipated. The fires were not just burning Oklahoma. They were reaching across state lines in every direction, killing people who had no idea they were in danger. Consider what happened in Beaver County on the evening of February 17th. 3 volunteer firefighters from the Ralston Fire Department were racing toward the Ranger Road fire in their engine. These were not federal hotshot crews with decades of wildland training and specialized equipment. These were unpaid community members, ranchers and farmers who also happened to be the only fire response their communities have. Their truck overturned on a county road while they were chasing a fire front moving at 70 miles per hour. 3 of them were injured. They were trying to stop a fire consuming 3 to 4 football fields every second with a single truck and no backup coming. That scene captures something essential about the wildfire crisis in Oklahoma that gets lost in the statistics. The people fighting these fires are the same people losing their land, their livestock, and their livelihoods to them. They are not drawing a paycheck for this. Many of them had cattle burning on their own ranches while they were out trying to save their neighbor's property, and the state that relies on them so completely has cut their support system to the bone. The livestock losses from this fire season are generational. Michael Kelsey, executive vice president of the Oklahoma Cattlemen's Association, described what ranchers are facing in terms that reveal the true depth of the damage. Ranchers are losing not just individual animals, but entire genetic lines that took decades of selective breeding to develop, hundreds of head at a time. One Oklahoma rancher lost 400 cattle in a single afternoon. Across the border in Kansas, another rancher watched more than 300 Angus cattle perish. These are not numbers on a spreadsheet. These represent 30, 40, sometimes 50 years of careful genetic selection, a rancher's entire life's work in breeding, selecting for traits like disease resistance, calving ease, feed efficiency, and temperament, gone between lunch and sundown. You cannot replace that by purchasing cattle at auction. Those genetics are extinct now. Bryce Boyer, spokesperson for the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, summarized the cascading impact. Massive cattle loss, massive hay loss. And for the ranchers who still have surviving herds, the grass they depend on to feed those animals has been incinerated. 283,000 acres of grazing land in the Ranger Road fire alone. Over 300,000 acres total across Oklahoma. The feed is gone, the fences are gone, the infrastructure that supports cattle operations across the Panhandle has been functionally destroyed, and this is not happening in isolation. National cattle herds have already dropped to their lowest levels since 1950. Beef prices are approaching $10 per pound. The economic ripple effects of losing this much breeding stock in a region already under historic pressure will be felt in grocery stores and restaurants across the country for years to come. Driving all of this is the same drought system that has been draining Lake Mead, depleting the Colorado River and dropping reservoir levels across the entire western half of the United States. Significant to extreme drought is already established across southern Oklahoma, and it is expanding northward. The National Interagency Fire Center's monthly outlook projects above normal fire potential continuing across the southern plains through at least April. There is no rainfall pattern in any current forecast model that would meaningfully change the equation. The drought has done two things simultaneously. It has cured the fuel, turning that 100 million acre grass bed into tinder, and it has eliminated the moisture that would normally slow fire spread, making every ignition more likely to become a large fire event rather than a small one that burns itself out. As of the latest reports, red flag warnings remain in effect across the majority of Oklahoma. Southwest winds are gusting to 40 miles per hour. Fire weather forecasts call for grassland fire spread rates of 240 to 320 feet per minute on any fully established wildfire. Mixed fuel areas will support torching, crowning, and spot fires jumping up to a quarter mile ahead of the main front. The National Interagency Fire Center elevated the national preparedness level to PL2 this week after 47 new large fire incidents were reported across the country in just 7 days. Nearly 1.5 million acres have burned across the United States in 2026, and the bulk of that destruction is concentrated on the Great Plains, where the conditions are not improving. Every single factor that created the Ranger Road megafire is still in place. The drought has not broken, the wind corridor has not shifted, the 100 million acres of cured grass have not received rain, the forestry agency is still operating without a state forester, the budget is still 40% below what the department requested, the volunteer departments are still running on donated money and donated time. The fires that have already burned across Beaver County, Harper County, Woodward County, Texas County, Woods County, Dewey County, McLean County, Jackson County, Love County, Beckham County, Custer County, Atoka County, Pushmataha County, LaFleur County, and Latimer County represent an entire state caught in a burning cycle that restarts every single time the wind picks up. The question facing Oklahoma is not whether another massive fire will ignite. Every meteorological model and every fire behavior expert agrees that more large fires are coming. The question is whether anyone will be properly resourced and organized to stop the next one. And based on everything we have just walked through, the answer to that question is deeply troubling. 900 volunteer departments are waiting for the next call. Many of them lack the equipment to answer it effectively. The wind across the Panhandle is picking up again, the grass is bone dry, and the season is still accelerating. That's it for today, folks. See you in the next video.